It only takes one video to misinform, and then it takes hours of research to debunk. And even after that research, there's an expression that it's easier to fool someone than to convince him that he's been fooled. Today, we're going to look at a myth about China and IP theft and attempt to put this myth to bed. Now, Jerry, I believe that you are quite well informed about this. What do you know about it?
You're exactly right about that effort needed to debunk these stories, Ian. I do a lot of research into China, and I need to specify exactly what I want to find and still get rubbish in return. It's really frustrating to try finding any research on anything when all the search engines give me is lies, the lies that I'm actually trying to debunk. Now, of course, if you just search on Google for IP theft in China, all you're going to see is stories about how China is guilty of this and always has been. You know the drill. But if you know what you're looking for, and I recently saw on X or on Twitter that there was a case of Stanford University caught stealing Chinese IP and claiming something as their own. Now, you can usually find that information. However, as usual, when I put Stanford University IP theft into the search engine, and this is really important, I got several links, actually thousands, alleging China is stealing. And one link was to a 2018 interview where Professor Goldstein of that university was interviewed about China stealing IP. Now, the interview was rather strange because the professor even admitted during the interview that no one knew the extent of IP theft, which is very interesting. It's an interesting way of saying no one knows whether it's really happening, but we will keep reporting that it is and explaining that it might be huge, even though it might not exist at all. And strangely, I can't find a reference outside of X to the case where the 3 students released a new AI model called Llama 3V using stolen IP. But what I can find, if I use the word plagiarize, several minor publications, but not a single mainstream media publication carried the story of 3 students who've now apologized for stealing IP and then publishing it as their own. Now imagine if Tsinghua University students who actually did write the code for this AI model had not included some very specific Chinese characters from the Warring States period of history, something no one at Stanford would have been likely to do, then this might have gone unnoticed. So the question should be asked, how deep does IP theft in the USA actually go? I don't know the answer to that.
Fascinating. Certainly not at all as we're led to believe. Fernando, what can you add to this?
Well, the fact is that China isn't a major threat to IP theft. The US is. We all know that they're attempting now to steal ownership of TikTok so they can both control the narrative that TikTok doesn't allow them to control, and at the same time, they can get the algorithm which TikTok created and seems, if we are to believe the New York Times, to be so much better than anything Western social media has. Stanford University isn't the only one to have been very quiet recently about this. We can be certain that if the situation had been reversed, if Tsinghua University had copied a Stanford IP, then there would be a global outrage, calls for them to be expelled and possibly even ambassadors called to the State Department for addressing down. Let's have a little think about this. In the last few years, we haven't seen any evidence of an IP theft by a Chinese company coming out of even U.S. courts with a guilty verdict. In fact, quite the opposite. Another one we're not seeing much of it in media was just last month when U.S. kicked out a case against Micron. It seems, as usual, the Department of Justice, which brought the case, didn't have enough evidence for the judge to convict the Chinese company. Once again, proving that the allegations don't always add up to proof. So, yeah, that's my point.
Okay, so I mean, we don't seem to hear of theft of Chinese intellectual property by Western companies or entities. Is this the first time that it's happened, Jerry?
Absolutely not, Ian. Just a couple of years ago, the Northwest Polytechnic University in Xi'an caught US hackers downloading illegally from their systems, apparently looking for information on China's hypersonic engine technology, something the Chinese have successfully got, but the US doesn't as yet. The Chinese government actually named the National Security Agency, NSA, as the people who did it and produced evidence. And again, this was something we didn't see covered in Western mainstream media, proving what we started the show with. It's very easy to fool people. It's a lot harder to convince people that they've been fooled, because any reports about this in Western media simply say China alleges. China didn't allege. China accused the NSA. It provided information that showed the hacks came from Tailored Access Operations, TAO, code S32 under the Data Reconnaissance Bureau, code S3 of the Information Department, code S of the US NSA. This was America stealing.
Good grief. Well, that's rather precise. So, Fernando, will it stop here?
No, Ian, it's not going to stop. The Council on Foreign Relations wrote an article in 2022 entitled "The U.S. Should Steal China's Regional Cooperation IP," indicating that they feel it's okay to copy China. Jake Werner of the Quincy Institute was recorded giving a speech a few days ago in which he suggested allowing China's EV companies into the United States because they know the auto industry cannot keep up. And then, without a trace of irony, this man suggested that the United States, should steal their IP. Now, do you remember the phrase Goebbels is credited with saying? He's often misquoted, actually, but his actual quote was, "The cleverest trick used in propaganda against Germany during the war was to accuse Germany of what our enemies themselves were doing." Now, perhaps we know why it is that the U.S. constantly accuses China of doing things without evidence, without successful prosecutions. And it is usually found to be actively involved in doing them themselves. This doesn't just apply to IP theft, guys. It applies to undermining democracy, suppressing freedom of speech, and large variety of human rights abuses, including crimes against humanity and genocide. They accuse China because they're doing it themselves.
Well, there we have it. Who'd have thought that the shoe was on the other foot in terms of IP theft? Thank you very much both for your thoughts, and I look forward to our next discussion. And thank you out there for watching too. Feel free to comment, press the like button, share, and above all, subscribe to our channel. And we shall see you next time for more China insights on the 3Ms.